A very good morning, my dear students. So, in the last session, we discussed about what are ions, how the ions are formed, and what are the different types of ions. That is the concept of cation and anion part is also discussed. And with the help of this ionic concept, one more very important concept we discussed in the last class is the chemical formula of the chemical substance. Students, so what is the important concept? The chemical formula of the chemical substance. Students, and in the last session we discussed about how to write the chemical formula of the different chemical substances. And already you know how to write the formula of the different chemical substance. You just recall the steps involved in writing the chemical formula of the chemical substance. Students, so I just revise how to write the chemical formula of the chemical substance. Students, the first step is write the symbolic representation of a positively charged ion present in the given substance and negatively charged ions present in the given substance. Students, and after writing the positive and negative part of the given chemical substance, the second important step is write the combining capacity of each ion. What is the second step here? Write the combining capacity of each ion, that is valency of both positively charged ion and valency of negatively charged ion. Students, and here while writing valency or while writing the combining capacity of each ion, so without any charge, you write the valency or you write the combining capacity without any electric charge. Students, and after writing this second step, the third important step is you just cross multiply these two valencies. So when you cross multiply these two valencies, finally you will get the chemical formula of the chemical substance. Students, so these are the three important steps involved in writing the chemical formula of the chemical substance. And now with the help of this ionic concept and the chemical formula of the chemical substance, so let us discuss one more very important term. A very important term used under chemistry is the chemical reactions and chemical equations. Students, and you please listen this concept carefully. It's a very important concept used under chemistry. Students, and here chemical reactions. The chemical reactions are the backbone of chemistry. The chemical reactions are the backbone of chemistry, and there is no chemistry without chemical reactions. There is no chemistry without chemical reactions. Students, and here in case of chemical reactions, in order to understand these chemical reactions, so it is necessary to know about the changes. I repeat, in order to understand the concept of chemical reactions, it is necessary to know about the changes. And in our day-to-day life, we come across several types of changes. And a substance is said to undergo change. A substance is said to undergo change only when if it gets converted from one state to another state, then only the substance is said to undergo change. Either it may be a physical or it may be a chemical change. Students, I repeat the sentence. A substance is said to undergo change. A substance is said to undergo change only when if it gets converted from one state to another state, then only the substance is said to undergo change. Students, and here a substance can undergo two different types of changes. Always in a chemical reaction, a substance can undergo two different types of changes. The first type of a change is called as a physical change, whereas the second type of a change is called as a chemical change. Students, please listen this concept carefully. In chemical reactions, a substance can undergo two different types of changes. The first change is called as a physical change and the second change is called as a chemical change, students. And here, in case of a physical change, so this physical change, it is said to be a temporary change of a chemical substance. Listen the concept carefully, students. The physical change, it is said to be a temporary change of a chemical substance. And here, in case of a physical change, a specific property of a chemical substance alters, keeping the chemical composition same. Listen the physical change carefully. So it is said to the physical change, it is a temporary change of a chemical substance, and in the physical change, the specific property of a chemical substance alters, keeping the chemical composition same. See here, in case of physical change, the best example is evaporation of water. You please recall the evaporation of water, students. See, in the evaporation of water, here the chemical substance is water. Yes, tell me anyone what is the formula of the water, students? Yes, very good. H2O is the formula of the water, students. And here, water. So, in liquid form also, the chemical formula of the water is H2O. Whereas in gaseous state also the chemical formula of the water is H2O only. That means after the evaporation also the liquid water is converted into gaseous state. So after the reaction also the formula of the chemical substance remains the same, students. That means before the evaporation also the formula of the water is H2O, and after the evaporation also the formula of the water is H2O only. That means chemical formula of the chemical substance remains the same. There is no change in the chemical composition of the matter. Then what type of changes in the physical change, students? So in a physical change, it is said to be a temporary change of a chemical substance. The temporary change of a chemical substance, and in which the specific property of a chemical substance alters. A specific property of a chemical substance alters, keeping the chemical composition same here. So that type of change is called as a physical change of a chemical substance, students. And here, so evaporation of water is an example. Then one more example we call it as a melting of ice. Melting of ice you can take, or melting of wax, melting of ghee. All these are nothing but example for physical change of a chemical substance, students. And one more very important point is in case of a physical change. So this physical change, it is said to be a reversible process. The liquid water is converted into gaseous state, and again the gaseous particles are condensed into liquid form. That means this process is called as a reversible process, students. That means the physical change, so it is a temporary change of a chemical substance as well as the same physical change. It is said to be a reversible process, students. Are you all understanding what I am explaining, students? Is it clear? So now coming to the second type of change. The second type of change is called as a chemical change. And here this chemical change, it is said to be a permanent change of a chemical substance. The permanent change of a chemical substance in which the chemical composition of a chemical substance changes. In case of physical change, the specific property of the chemical substance alters, keeping the chemical composition same. Whereas in case of a chemical change, the chemical composition of the chemical substance alters. So such type of the changes we call it as a chemical change of a chemical substance, students. And here physical change it is said to be a reversible process, whereas chemical change, the chemical change it may be a reversible or it may be irreversible, students. So in chemical change, some of the reactions are irreversible and some of the chemical reactions are reversible, students. Okay, so one is said to be a physical change and the second one is called as a chemical change. And for the chemical changes, the best example is combustion of carbon element, students. Listen the example carefully. Combustion of carbon. See, combustion of carbon means the carbon element, when it burns with excess of air, when it burns with excess of oxygen, it forms carbon dioxide. And similarly, the one more example is combustion of sulfur. The sulfur element, when it burns with excess of oxygen, or the sulfur element, when it burns with excess of air, once again it forms sulfur dioxide. And similarly, rusting of iron is an example. Decomposition of limestone. Is anyone, what is the formula of limestone, students? Limestone, what is the chemical name? Yes, calcium carbonate, that is CaCO3. The decomposition of limestone, decomposition of calcium carbonate. When this limestone undergo decomposition, it forms calcium oxide and carbon dioxide, students. So once again, in this decomposition also, there is a change in the chemical composition of the chemical substance. Before the reaction, limestone is present. When it undergo decomposition, calcium oxide and carbon dioxide are formed, students. That means there is a change in the chemical composition of a chemical substance, students. Okay, so all these are nothing but example for the chemical changes, students. Is it clear? Is there any doubt in the physical as well as a chemical change, students? So always in a chemical reaction, a substance can undergo two types of changes. The first type is called as a physical change of a chemical substance, and the second type is called as a chemical change of a chemical substance, students. The physical change, it is a temporary change of a chemical substance, whereas chemical change, it is a permanent change of a chemical substance. So physical change, it is a reversible process, whereas chemical change, it may be reversible or irreversible process, students. And now, with the help of these physical and chemical changes, let us switch on to the definition of chemical reactions. So already you come across these reactions and equations in your lower class. And you know the definition of a chemical reaction and chemical equations also. Just tell me, what is the simple definition for the chemical reaction, students? Yes, what is the chemical reaction? A chemical reaction is a process. A chemical reaction is a process in which two or more than two chemical substances combine to form a new chemical substance. That is said to be a chemical reaction, students. Listen the definition carefully. What is mean by chemical reaction here? So two or more than two chemical substances. So two or more than two chemical substances combine to form a new chemical substance. That itself we call it as a chemical reaction, students. And before only I told that we come across several types of changes in our day-to-day life, students. Let us take one of the commonly used chemical reaction in our day-to-day life. So let us take a container. In that container, add some 200 ml of water. Add some 3 to 4 teaspoon of sugar particles. Add 1 to 2 teaspoon of tea powder. Then add 1 cup of milk. Okay. And after adding all these, if you provide the quantity of heat to this container, so finally you will get a new chemical substance. Yes, tell me anyone, what is the end product formed in this reaction, students? That's very good. So T is the end product formed in this chemical reaction, students. See, water is one chemical substance, tea powder is one chemical substance, sugar particle is one chemical substance, milk is one chemical substance. See, all these chemical substances combine to form a new chemical substance called as a tea. See, this reaction takes place in our day-to-day life, students. So here, in case of a chemical reactions, I just repeat the definition. Please listen the general definition for the chemical reaction. The reaction is a process in which two or more than two chemical substances combine to form a new chemical substance. So this itself we call it as a chemical reaction, students. And always in case of a chemical reactions, in chemical reactions we use two important terminologies. Okay, the first important term, used under chemical reaction is reactants, and the second term is called as a product. Listen these two terms carefully. One is reactants and the second one is called as a products. So these are the two important terminologies used under chemical reaction, students. Then what are reactants and what are products here? Yes, tell me, students, what are reactants? What are reactants, students? The substances present before the chemical reactions are called as reactants. Is it clear, students? Tell me, what are reactants then? So the reactants are the chemical substances. The reactants are the chemical substances present before the chemical reactions. So all those substances are called as a reactant, students. Or the substances which are involved in the chemical reaction. The chemical substances which takes part in a chemical reaction are called as a reactant, students. And on the other hand, the second terminology is called as a products. The second terminology is called as a products. And here the products are the chemical substances formed after the chemical reaction. All those substances are called as a products, students. You please listen this reaction concept carefully. The substances which are present before the chemical reaction are called as reactants, and a new substances formed after the chemical reactions are called as a product, students. So first terminology is reactants and the second terminology is called as a product, students. Now by using these reactants and products, in these chemical reactions, can you recall what are the reactants and products present in these reactions, students? Yes, very good. A, then B and C. All these three substances are called as a reactants here. A is a reactant, B is a reactant and C is a reactant. So all these reactants combine to form a new substance called as ABC. That means ABC is called as a product. A plus B and C. All these three substances are called as a reactants, students. Okay, now by using these reactants and products, let us define the chemical definition of a chemical reaction, students. Now by using these reactants and products, chemical reaction is a process in which reactants react to form products. Listen the definition carefully. The chemical reaction is a process in which chemical reactants react to form a product or reactants react to give products. So that is said to be a chemical definition of a chemical reaction, students. See, one is a simple and general definition for the chemical reaction, and after knowing these two terminologies, after knowing these reactants and products, so the one more definition is a chemical definition of a chemical reaction, students. Now with the help of these two definitions, With the help of these two definitions, the one more definition we can also define. We can also define the chemical reaction is a process. Chemical reaction is a process in which one state of a matter is converted into another state of a matter. That is also called as a chemical reaction, students. I repeat the third definition. Chemical reaction is a process in which one state of a matter is converted into another state of a matter, students. Okay, so this is regarding the chemical reaction definition, students. Is it clear for you? Is there any doubt? So now tell me, what is the chemical definition of a chemical reaction, students? It is a process in which the reactants react to form a product, or the reactants react to give products. That is said to be a chemical reaction, students. Then what are the two different terms used under chemical reaction, students? Yes, very good. One is called as reactant and the second term is called as a product, students. Then what are reactants, students? The chemical substances which are present before the chemical reaction. All those substances are called as a reactants here. Then what are products, students? A new chemical substance formed. A new chemical substance formed after the chemical reaction. All those substances are called as a product, students. Okay, so this is about the definition of a chemical reaction, the important terms used under chemical reactions, and the two different types of changes takes place in a chemical reaction, students. Is it clear, students? Is there any doubt in this concept? And now, with the help of this chemical reaction, the one more terminology is chemical equations. So before the classification of a chemical reaction, so let us discuss about, so what is mean by a chemical equation? Chemical equation. Chemical equations. What is mean by chemical equations, students? The chemical equation, it is a short scientific method of representing the reactants and products. The short scientific method of representing the reactants and products with the help of their symbol or chemical formulae. That is said to be a chemical equation, students. So let us take an example here. Carbon. Listen the example. The chemical reaction. Carbon element, when it reacts with the oxygen molecule. The carbon element, when it reacts with the oxygen molecule, it forms carbon dioxide. Students. So this is the chemical reaction. Now here, chemical equation. You just recall the definition. It is a short scientific method of representing the reactants and products with the help of their symbol or chemical formula. That is said to be a chemical equation, students. Now let us represent the equation for this chemical reaction, students. Carbon. Yes, tell me, what is the symbol for the carbon element, students? Yes, very good. So capital C is the symbol for carbon, students. Now tell me, what is the symbolic representation for oxygen molecule? Yes, very good. O2 is the symbolic representation. The carbon, when it burns with the oxygen molecule, when it burns with excess of air, it forms carbon dioxide. Yes, tell me, students, what is the formula of carbon dioxide here? Very good. CO2 is the formula of the carbon dioxide. So this is regarding the chemical equation, students. This is chemical reaction and this one is called as a chemical equation, students. And in this chemical equation, so the symbol and chemical formula of the chemical substances are used. Okay, so in simple words, chemical equation, it is defined as the symbolic representation of a chemical reaction. Symbolic representation of chemical reactions are called as chemical equation, students. Is it clear? Is there any doubt in the chemical equation? Yes, tell me, students, what is mean by chemical equation? The symbolic representation of chemical reactions are called as chemical equations, students. And in the representation of chemical equation, always the reactants are represented on the left hand side of the chemical equation and the products are represented on the right hand side of the chemical equation. Students, listen this representation carefully. The reactants are always represented on the left hand side of the chemical equation and the products are represented on the right hand side of the chemical equation, students. So this is the symbolic representation of a chemical reaction, students. That is nothing but the chemical equation for the combustion of carbon element. And now in this symbolic representation, carbon and oxygen, these two are called as the reactants, whereas carbon dioxide is called as a product, students. And now in this symbolic representation, in a chemical equation, if more than one reactant is involved, and more than one product is formed. If more than one reactant and more than one product is formed means, so these substances are separated by using a positive sign between the chemical substances, students. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಮೋರ್ ದ್ಯಾನ್ ಒನ್ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಇತ್ತು ಅಥವಾ ಮೋರ್ ದ್ಯಾನ್ ಒನ್ ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಆಗ್ತಿತ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ಸೊ ಈ ಸಬ್ಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನು ನಾವು ಪಾಸಿಟಿವ್ ಸೈನ್ ಅನ್ನು ಹಾಕೋದ್ರ ಮುಖಾಂತರ ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ, ಸಪರೇಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀವಿ. a positive sign is used to separate both the substances, students. Either it may be on the left hand side of the chemical equation or on the right hand side of the chemical equation, students. And now with the help of this representation, one more important point between the reactants and products. In some of the chemical reactions there exists an single arrow mark like this. And in some of the chemical reactions there exists a double half arrow pointing in an opposite direction like this, students. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ಕೆಮಿಕಲ್ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಒಳಗ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಟೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಮತ್ತೆ ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಮಧ್ಯ ನಮಗೆ ಸಿಂಗಲ್ ಆರೋ ಮಾರ್ಕ್ ಎಕ್ಸಿಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಇನ್ನು ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ರಿಯಾಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಒಳಗ ಬಿಟ್ವೀನ್ ದಿ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಟೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂಡ್ ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ದೇರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಿಸ್ಟ್ ಆನ್ ಡಬಲ್ ಹಾಫ್ ಆರೋ ಪಾಯಿಂಟಿಂಗ್ ಇನ್ ಆನ್ ಅಪೋಸಿಟ್ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಷನ್, ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್. ಪ್ಲೀಸ್ ಲಿಸನ್ ದೀಸ್ ಟು symbolic representations. Suppose there exists a single arrow mark like this. ನೋಡಿ, ಬರೀ ಸಿಂಗಲ್ ಆರೋ ಮಾರ್ಕ್ ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ಎಕ್ಸಿಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗ್ತಿತ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ಸೊ ದಿಸ್ ಸಿಂಬಲ್ ಇಂಡಿಕೇಟ್ಸ್ ದ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಷನ್ ಇನ್ ವಿಚ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಟೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ ಕನ್ವರ್ಟೆಡ್ ಇಂಟು ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ಸ್. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಈ ಆರೋ ಮಾರ್ಕ್ ನಮಗೆ ಏನ್ ಇಂಡಿಕೇಟ್ ಮಾಡತ್ರಿ, ಕೆಮಿಕಲ್ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಷನ್ ಒಳಗ ಬರೀ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಟೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾವು. That means the reaction proceeds only from left to right of a chemical reaction or chemical equation, students. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಬರೀ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಟೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಇದ್ದು ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಕನ್ವರ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಓಕೆ, ಸೊ ಸಪೋಸ್ there exists a double half arrow. ಇನ್ನು ಕೆಲವೊಂದು ರಿಯಾಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಒಳಗೆ ನಮಗೆ ಡಬಲ್ ಹಾಫ್ ಆರೋ ಪಾಯಿಂಟಿಂಗ್ ಇನ್ ಅನ್ ಅಪೋಸಿಟ್ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಷನ್, ಈ ತರ ಸಿಂಬಲ್ ಎಕ್ಸಿಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಈ ತರ ಸಿಂಬಲ್ ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ಎಕ್ಸಿಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗ್ತಿತ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ, ಸೊ ವಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದಿ ಇಂಡಿಕೇಶನ್ ಫಾರ್ ದಿಸ್ ಸಿಂಬಲ್, ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್? So if there exists a double half arrow pointing in an opposite direction, so this symbol indicates in a chemical reaction reactants are converted into products and again products react to give back original substances. ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಈ ತರ ಸಿಂಬಾಲ್ ಇತ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಟೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ ಅನ್ನು ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾವು, ಮತ್ತೆ ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿಬಿಟ್ಟು ನಮಗೆ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಟೆಂಟ್ ಅಥವಾ ಒರಿಜಿನಲ್ ಸಬ್ಸ್ಟೆನ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನ ಕೊಡ್ತಾವು. ಅಂದ್ರೆ the reaction proceeds from left to right and the reaction proceeds from right to left, students. So left ಇಂದ ರೈಟ್ ನು ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ರೈಟ್ ಇಂದ ಲೆಫ್ಟ್ ನು ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ರಿಯಾಕ್ಟೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿನೂ ಕನ್ವರ್ಟ್ ಆಗ್ತಾವು, ಸೊ ಮತ್ತೆ ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ಸ್ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿ ರಿಯಾಕ್ಟೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ನು ಆಗ್ತಾವು. ಹೌದಾ? ಸೊ ಒಂದು ಸಿಂಬಾಲ್ ಅನ್ನು ನಾವು ಇರ್ರಿವರ್ಸಿಬಲ್ ಸೈನ್ ಅಂತ ಕರೀತೀವಿ, and this symbol is called as a reversible sign, students. So here, if there exists an irreversible sign, irreversible means in which only reactants are converted into products, and the second sign is reversible sign. So reversible means in which reactants are converted into products and again products react to give back original substance, students. Okay, so between the reactants and the products, either there exists an irreversible sign or there exists an reversible sign, students. And now with the help of this reversible and irreversible sign, in a chemical reaction, the one more symbolic representation is the vertical arrow mark which shows upward direction. Vertical arrow mark which shows upward direction. So this arrow mark indicates so the product formed is in the form of gaseous state. ಈ ತರ ಆರೋ ಮಾರ್ಕ್ ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ಎಕ್ಸಿಸ್ಟ್ ಆಗ್ತಿತ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ನಮಗೆ ಗ್ಯಾಸಿಯಸ್ ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ ಫಾರ್ಮೇಷನ್ ಅನ್ನ ಇಂಡಿಕೇಟ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. And one more is the vertical arrow mark which shows downward direction. The vertical arrow mark which shows downward direction. So this arrow mark indicates the product formed is in the form of precipitate or in the form of a solid state, students. ಹೌದಾ? ಸೊ ಅಪ್ವರ್ಡ್ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಇತ್ತು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಗ್ಯಾಸಿಯಸ್ ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಇಂಡಿಕೇಟ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. ದ ಆರೋ ಮಾರ್ಕ್ ವಿಚ್ ಶೋಸ್ ಡೌನ್ವರ್ಡ್ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಷನ್ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ ಇಟ್ ಇಂಡಿಕೇಟ್ಸ್ ಸಾಲಿಡ್ ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ ಫಾರ್ಮೇಷನ್ ಆರ್ ದ ಪ್ರೆಸಿಪಿಟೇಟ್ ಪ್ರಾಡಕ್ಟ್ ಫಾರ್ಮೇಷನ್, ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್. Okay, so this is all about the symbolic representation of a chemical reaction, students. Just tell me what is mean by chemical equation. The symbolic representation of chemical reactions are called as chemical equation, students. Is there any doubt in this concept? Is it clear? Okay, so I'll stop here only. In the next class we'll discuss about the types of chemical reactions and example for each type. Okay, thank you.